Bravely Default 2 is about as JRPG as you can get. There's a good story, we've got good characters, we've got jobs, spells, abilities, art, music that were amazing. Just the entire thing screams JRPG. Now, I'm not very critical when it comes to video games. However, we are going to be talking about a few things that I think Square could have done better, as well as highlighting a lot of things that I really enjoyed about the game. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's go ahead and begin this review by talking about the area where I see most reviews conflict, the story and the characters. Some say it's decent, some say it's boring, and some say it's downright awful. I tend to be pretty forgiving when I talk about games, but even if I wasn't, the story was alright. Could it have been better? Yeah, of course. Almost any story can. The story revolves around the 4 heroes of light, which is a little cliche at this point, but they did it really well. Each character, including the main character, all had their own personalities and a decent amount of character development within the story, as most good JRPGs do. The main character though, Seth, had the least, and I felt like this was a little confusing because you got to name him, and his personality was just a little bit bland, almost like they were going for a mixture of silent protagonist where you project yourself onto the character, and having the character be like everyone else with a bigger personality and story arc. It didn't really work all that well, but the main character was the only bad thing about the story, characters, or the writing that I personally had a problem with. I've read reviews where they say the story is boring and the writing is bad, but honestly, it's got plenty of twists, turns, and character development. You learn a lot about each character as the story progresses, and the characters progress with it. For example, Elvis is a very carefree person, but when his chapter comes along, his homeland is in danger, and he must learn how to take things seriously if he wants to save it. You even have party chats where you press the plus button and the characters talk to each other, so you get to learn a lot and add to things that way as well. The voice acting was also really well done and really added to the characters' personalities. Overall, I think the story was as good as it could be. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't terrible either. The art style was beautiful and made wonderful imaginative environments and characters. I will say that the game's graphics, resolution, and anti-aliasing could certainly have been improved, but to be honest, it wasn't bad enough for me to actually care about it. The game also didn't really run very well, at least not on my Switch. It suffered from some stuttering, some small freezing, and long load times. Sometimes when I would talk to people or it'd load a scene, I'd have to wait like 3 to 5 seconds for the scene to actually load. Again, nothing to really ruin the experience, but it certainly detracted from it. Let's talk about what I enjoyed the most, the battling and job system. I could honestly fight all day in this system and it wouldn't bother me one bit. The battles are turn-based and operate on an active time battle-like system. The gauge would fill up and a character would take their turn. The gauge's speed would depend on the character's speed stat as well as any buffs or debuffs affecting it. However, time in battle does stop while you select the character's actions. This gives you plenty of time to think about your strategy. Then you had brave points and defaulting, which are obviously what the game is named for. Instead of choosing a boring defend option and wasting your turn, players could default, which would make the character not only defend against attacks for a whole turn, but also add a brave point. Brave points, or BP, allowed characters to take extra turns. For example, if I don't have any BP, I could only do one action, but if I had a BP and spent it, I could take 2 actions, such as raise an ally from the dead and heal them one right after the other in the same turn. You could even borrow BP from future turns, putting you in the negatives, which makes your character have to wait until their BP is 0 again before making any moves. Each time a character's turn comes around and your BP is in the negatives, it will increase by 1 BP, which will bring you back into the positives eventually. This definitely adds a layer of strategy to battles, as there are many different ways that you could go about it. Like, do you go all out and go into the negatives, or do you spend your BP wisely? Do you even default at all? You'll need to think about these things as you progress through and battles get tougher. Next up is the job system, or classes as they're called in other RPGs. There's so much to this system that is a little overwhelming, to be honest. I don't mean that it's complicated, no, in fact it's really quite simple. There are just so many options. Each job has its own skills and spells, passive abilities, and their own weapon proficiency. These skills aren't available to you though right from the get-go. You have one skill to begin with and you need to level it up through job points to learn the rest. This is where almost the entire game's progress in combat takes place. The passive abilities allow benefits to your characters in the middle of battle. For example, you can learn Revenge from the Red Mage job, and when equipped to a character and that character gets attacked, you have a 50% chance of getting 1 BP. You can only equip 5 passive abilities out of 24 jobs, with each job having 2 to 5 abilities to learn. Once you start learning skills or spells from the jobs though, you can switch your main job to something else, and then have your old one as a sub-job. A sub-job doesn't gain experience, but you will be able to use the spells and skills you've learned while that was your main job. For example, if you have a Black Mage that was level 6 and learned Fira, and you wanted to switch to Vanguard, you could use that Fire spell even as a Vanguard. I wouldn't recommend doing this as each job has different weapon proficiency, and a Vanguard that has low magic attack and is better with an axe or a sword than a cane isn't really going to cast a strong spell. It works much better when you pair classes that complement each other like Black Mage and Red Mage, where you get the magic attack power from the Black Mage, but also open up more spells and healing capabilities that the Black Mage wouldn't have from the Red Mage. Like I said before, you have 24 jobs, 2 of them being optional, and this opens up a lot of opportunities for different party builds, and like I said, it's kind of overwhelming. Now I know that the other games have more jobs and you're probably thinking, hold my beer, but like I said, we're not here to compare. The amount of jobs wouldn't be overwhelming if the amount of JP or job points you got after battle scaled a little more than it does throughout the game. I understand why it doesn't, and I think it's because they wanted all jobs to be created equal, but unless you want to grind for many hours, even using tricks like bait to chain encounters for more JP, you're only going to be able to master a few. So that's another choice that you have to make as well. Do I master these jobs, or do I get them to like halfway, like level 5, and then I just switch to something else? I will go ahead and mention that this game is kind of a grind. You are going to have to grind some jobs every once in a while, but it honestly isn't really that bad. The job system works really well with defaulting and braving because it opens up even more opportunities and possibilities and allows you to take full advantage of having main jobs and sub jobs. For example, you can have Bard be a sub job and Vanguard be a main job. Use your BP and have a Bard sing a song to power yourself up, and then use Vanguard's boosted attack power to deal some major damage all in one turn. Boss battles are also incredibly long. They have a lot of HP and you don't really deal a whole lot of damage, especially at the beginning of the game. However, I will say that the satisfaction you get from leveling up these jobs and taking down these big bosses is incredible. The skills and passive abilities you learn from the jobs make it well worth it, and almost each boss carries an asterisk which will unlock a new job for you, which is a nice way of rewarding your efforts. One thing to make the grinding a little easier for you is to use the boat when you're not playing the game. All you have to do is go up to the old lady, and while you've either stepped away from the console or the console is in sleep mode, you'll have your own text-based adventure going to islands, visiting other players, and most importantly, finding treasure and discovering items. These items and treasures usually end up being money, JP orbs, or experience orbs, which supplement the time that you're not playing the game up to 12 hours. I would recommend Bravely Default 2 to just about any JRPG lover. If you weren't sure, hopefully this review clarified some things and helps you make an informed decision. If you're still not sure and would like to ask any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. I will get to them as soon as I can. Or you can also catch me live on Twitch and talk with me and chat live. I do stream every Tuesday and Sunday, as well as one random day in between. If you did enjoy the video though, please go ahead and give it a like, as well as subscribe to the channel if you want to see some more RPG related content here in the future. That's going to be it from me for today, everybody. Have a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever and whenever you are, and as always, stay crazy. Okay, that must be the end of the world. Oh, boy. Do a barrel roll. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. Oh, shit.